Today I'm going to work on a project that's just a little bit different. This right here is a Jeep FC-150 frame from the forward cab model. Now you've seen this frame before. I dragged it out of the woods a while back. And then when I did my Willys motor revival bonanza, where I took all the different motors and tried to get one running, this is my test frame I used to put a motor in to try to get it running. And then at the end of that video, I realized I had a frame with a running motor. I was going to try to get it to drive. However, I immediately ran into a problem. Those front tires. The problem is, your driving position is fixed by the steering wheel. You can't move that. You have to sit on top of a tire. And sitting on a tire is not good for driving. So I had to do something different, and I wasn't sure what it was going to be. So I parked this frame right here where I had to walk by it every day, and it sort of sat in the back of my mind. I just sort of thought about it. Then I came up with what it needed to be. With the low height and long distance from the driver to the back, it became obvious. I need to turn this Willys Jeep into a covered wagon. Once I got looking at the basic shape of it and where the driver sat, it just seemed to be natural. So I'm going to give that a shot and see what I come up with. This should be fun. Now before we get to the fun stuff, I got a little bit of housekeeping to do. Now if you saw the last video, you'll know that I was missing a stud here where the exhaust manifold bolt's on, and I just threw a bolt in. The bolt leaked to cool it out, so we got to fix that. I got the correct stud with a nut on it and some number 2 gasket sealer. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop the old bolt out here. Now I'm going to slobber thread sealant on the threads. So that way when I put this stud in, it should lock in place. And since it's a stud, I can take the manifold on and off without removing it. All right, hopefully that fixes the leak. We'll know as soon as we fill it with water, but I'm gonna assume it's fixed for now. I also had an issue where this freeze plug here was leaking because it's partially popped out. Now remember, this motor had a cracked block from water freezing inside it, and it probably popped this out at the same time. Now, in order to get these sealed properly, you need to clean up the surface and put a nice fresh plug in to make sure there's nice clean edges. So what I'm going to do is just pound this one back in and hope it works. There, it's back in. That should be fine. I have a lot of freedom in this design here. I really don't have too many constraints. Basically, there's the motor, which is there already, and I just have to work around, and the steering wheel, which I have to be able to turn. Other than that, pretty much anything goes. So I'm going to try to position everything so I can sit and steer all at the same time. Now one thing you may notice here, I'm standing up. This steering wheel is like neck level. So these FC-150s are tall, a lot taller than you sort of picture them, and definitely taller than a regular CJ type Jeep would be. So that's one thing to take into account. Now if this is my floor area, I'm going to try putting a seat on it and see with a seat and cushioning how it does on the steering wheel here. You guys are getting a sneak peek here. I actually bought these for that buggy project. Now this is a boat seat. I like boat seats because they're marine vinyl. They're really waterproof. They can handle sun pretty well. That buggy doesn't have a roof. This thing's not going to have a roof, so it's probably going to have a boat seat also. So this will give me good sizing. But that's the red and black for the buggy. They're also pretty narrow. They're not nearly as wide as a regular car seat, which will help with that buggy because I couldn't fit 2 regular car seats in there. Also, they're way cheaper than car seats. That's not bad. Yeah, that's not too bad at all. This is the spot. They're going right here. This is going to be interesting to drive. I like the visibility. I'm going to start the entire process with a single piece of tubing. I'm picking the width because this one is already pre-cut lying in my pile, and it looks about right. So 61.5 inches wide is now our official width. So my main thing is that when these tires at full lock, full articulation, they won't rub this piece. So I've measured to my bump stops, added a little for flex, and basically ran the tape measure straight down. We're just going to clear that tire by a little bit, but that's perfect. It'll rarely be turned all the way and flexing, so I really won't have any issues with it being that close most of the time, but it could happen. And I'm planning on taking this thing and doing some serious off-roading with it because, you know, that's what they did with covered wagons. So we need to make sure this works because this isn't just going to be for show. We're going to really drive this thing. Now, my original plan, once I made this cross member, I was going to go up at a 45-degree angle, bend the tubing this way, and go straight back. Then I did some looking at pictures of covered wagons. They never use curves. If I did that, I'd have a nice arc here, which would make a really good wheel well, but it wouldn't look like a covered wagon. They use all straight edges and straight cuts on the framework because it was pieces of wood they just chopped up. So I'm going to put another cross member right up here and go straight up and then straight back, get a little more angled. Now on the cross member, now I'm looking over here at this cross member with some holes in it. I think I'm going to bolt another cross member across there. I've got these body mounts, and that's going to be a good place to mount it to the frame because that's what they're there for. We're going to have one main beam all the way on the outside, another one directly over all these body mounts, and the same thing on the other side, and then cross members where each of these body mounts are, and that should tie the whole thing together. Anything else I need to build, I'll just add afterwards, but that'll be the main structure. It's supper time and I'm about to quit here, but I'm going to show you what happened. I didn't do the camera on most of it because it was really boring, cutting, tack welding, measuring, cutting, tack welding, welding, cut off the tack weld, weld again in a new spot. Not that interesting. But let me show you what I got to. First off, I decided on all these cross members, I was thinking about welding it straight to the frame, but I realized that I might need to someday take this off. So I went ahead and put in bolts on everything. All the cross members are bolted in. Even on the verticals that hold the thing on, there's bolts with a nut welded in the end there. So everything is removable on this. What we've got so far is a hefty cross member on the front that will support most of the weight of the driver. And then we have tubes running back. We've got a vertical next to the motor because I couldn't go through the motor with a cross member. Another one in the first spot here by the transmission. Then there's another one. And then tomorrow there's going to be one here, and then maybe some more here, and maybe some more here. But I haven't got to those yet. But I did get the longitudinal supports all in place. So we are going to have a 10-foot long, and I picked that number because these pieces came in 20-footers, so I could just cut them in half. But it's a 10-foot long deck all the way up to the front here. And I'm going to mount a seat right here, but it's pretty much going to be just wide open space on the whole thing. The motor sticks up a little bit. There really wasn't anything I'd do about this. This would get way too high if I completely went above it. But I'm just going to put a little cover over it. It's not going to be too much higher. There's a couple good advantages I have here. First off, being the L-head motor with a flat head, it's fairly low to start with. Let me show you that carburetor. That was what usually sticks up. Now this carburetor is a Solix replacement carb that takes the place of the stock style carb. The reason that matters is because these are actually a pretty small carburetor. Then they have an extension right here to make it the height of the factory one. So that way you can use all your factory stuff. I don't care about that. So what I could do is take that whole thing off. That's just an extension stuffed on there. Now the carburetor is real low. If you look at it this way, all you will be able to put an air horn on and still be right about level with the thermostat housing and the oil filler. So I'm only going to have a few inches of an engine cover. And that's probably good because it's probably good to not put stuff on top of the motor directly because there's going to be heat coming up and such. And then I'm going to have people go for a ride with me, and I don't want them sitting on the motor because, you know, their butt's going to get hot. So I'll have a cover there so people know that's where the motor is and we're not going to sit on it. But other than that, this thing's going to be pretty much a free-for-all. as far as what you do in the back. Lots of storage. I'm gonna have to do a little camping with this thing because there's plenty of room to sleep in back. But anyway, that's our map for today. I will pick up again on this tomorrow and knock out as much as I can. Actually, I think I'm changing that order. I could actually finish up this framework tomorrow, but I realized I've got enough to sit on. I think tomorrow I'm gonna get this thing driving. We'll worry about the rest later. It's the next day and I'm really glad I switched from finishing up the frame to getting it running, because I almost made a mistake. Let me show you what I got here. Now my plan was to add cross members at all the body mounts, which meant I would have put one here if I kept going. And that would have been bad. Now, of course, I'm going to use a boat gas tank. This is the one I'm going to use to start it up. You've seen this in many videos because I use the same tank in like 5 different vehicles. Keeps the gas fresh. But anyway, as I was thinking of doing that, I realized I've got another boat tank that might be the permanent gas tank for this vehicle. And that is this one right here. I salvaged this one out of a cabin cruiser years back. It is a 24-gallon boat tank. And I'm glad I didn't put that crossmember in. Let me show you where this fits. That tank fits perfectly right there. And there's the mount I would have used. If I had done that, I never could have fit this tank here. Now I can switch and put my next mount right here. It's not that far off, it'll work fine. But I'm glad I hadn't actually done this yet, because now I can add it there. And I can use this mount to make a support across to actually hold this gas tank in place. And the sizing on this is really nice. It fits right below. I'm gonna have to make a little access cover here to fill the tank. It clears the tires, no problem. Clears the deck and holds a lot of fuel. And it's nicely supported right across where the frame rails are. So that's perfect. I'm not gonna use it today because I've got my other one has some gas in it. And filling this thing up is gonna be really expensive. I'm going to use that eventually, so I'm going to plan around it and leave it in place here. But back to getting this thing running. I'm working on installing this side mount radiator I used to test the motor with. There's 2 reasons I'm doing this. One is it was already lying around, and 2 is it worked last time. I actually am considering leaving this as a permanent radiator if it keeps it cool. I'll probably move it a bit, but it'd be nice to have the heat go out the side on this because if we're going slow, the air is not going to rush over very fast. You don't want heat being pumped back to everyone riding. So if I could blow it out the side, that might be better. So we'll see how this works. This transmission is a T90 of the side shift variety, which means it doesn't have the stick coming out the top. It's got 2 levers here. When you move those, one of them does first gear and reverse gear. The other one does second and third gear. I don't know which is which. I don't know which way they go. So what I've done is I'm hooking up a starter button. I'm going to crank it over, try putting these positions, see which one goes reverse, and I know that's my first reverse slider. All right, I think I'm in neutral. I'm going to try that first. Yep, we got no movement. First one I picked is reverse. So that arm going that way is reverse. We'll switch it the other way, we should go forward. So, there's our forward and reverse. I'm going to connect that one, and then we got gears. I just realized a higher priority than gears is this clutch linkage. So right now it's got the clutch cable attached. The belt crank is on the transmission. This part's floppy, so I got to bolt that on. Also, I need something to pull that way in order to actually disengage the clutch. So that's next. Now the factory used this belt crank right here to actuate the clutch. There was a cable coming down from above from the pedal that pulled on it, and then another cable going from this other side and went back over 6 feet to where the actual belt crank to actuate the clutch is. So I need to connect this up. Now since I don't have the cables, I'm going to go ahead and make up something else. I have pieces of scrap steel. Now this is just flat bar and it's not long enough, but it's close, and I've got a few of them. Alright, now we have to feed this through the motor mount all the way back there. Oop, looks like we're running into a brake line. Yeah, we'll just bend the brake line out of the way. Those are rusted off anyway. Alright, feeding this through, feeding this through. Alright, now I'm going to connect the other end. We're going to stick a bolt out through there, bring our flat bar There, now we can pull that bell crank. Now let's go to the other end. Got a hole drilled in my other end, so we're going to go ahead and slide that through. Now I found an extra rusty nut and bolt in my bin here. I pick extra rusty for a reason. They actually act like a self-locker. They don't want to go together, you have to force them through, so it's not going to back off easily. Oh yeah, so that's good and self-locking. Alright, we're not going to tighten it up all the way, give it a little bit of play so this can swivel free. Now we're going to bolt the two halves together. I need to take this bell crank and twist it this way, like the cable is pulling up, in order for this to operate. Now, I don't have the cable pulling up, I'm not going to have anything up there, so I'm going to try to take this piece and extend it that way in order to actually operate it. Now my scrap bin, I found a piece that already has a tab welded to it, so I think what I can do is I can actually put this over the nut on the end, drill a hole here to catch that other piece, and then this will transfer the motion. Then I'll use this one, like that, as an extension out here, and now I just have to twist this, twist it that way. Which of course, it'd be easy to go this way, but no, I've got to go the other way. So, then I'm going to take a pedal and hook it up so you push down on it like that in order to actually operate the clutch. I'll need a support out here to keep this from just falling down. I'll need to modify this one severely, but I think I can make this work. We've got something here. I was originally going to use the pedal pad for pressing on, but the extra piece of arm looked kind of like a horseshoe, so I just welded it on. And when the first time I pressed it, it went from my initial position here down to there. I think that linkage stretched or something settled in place. So I'm going to have to readjust that. And it's not the most natural feeling thing in the world because you have to hit it with your heel. But we got a clutch. And that's good enough for now. I'm finalizing the last things I need to get this thing driving. I've got the starter button hooked up, no problem there. Ignition, I've got a wire that's positive. I've got an alligator clip. So what I'm going to do is just connect those two, and right from the driver's seat I can yank this, and if anything goes wrong it'll just shut down. Now I've got the battery secured in place with a tie down, so that's not going anywhere. Alligator clip again, and pretty much the electrical system's done. Now I got to see if this thing will start, because I haven't actually started it up in, well, since I worked on the motor. Alright, let's see if this thing will fire up. That sounded promising. Now that plug didn't want to come out of the head, but I'm going to ignore it. We'll check the other ones and see if we have spark there. It should run on 3 anyway. Yeah, there's spark and everything. Huh. Alright, that's it. I'm going to let that starter cool down. Even though it's a Toyota starter, still, it's going to get hot eventually, and I've been cranking this for way too long. So I'm calling it quits. We'll pick up again tomorrow. And maybe I'll think of something overnight. I thought about it last night. Last time I had this motor running, I had a WO Carter carburetor on here, and I swapped it out for this Solex to get the lower height. Those Solex carbs, I haven't had as much luck with them on old motors. I'm wondering if somehow the original style was better with a low vacuum signal from a worn out motor. Pouring raw fuel in there, it should have just went. But I'm going to try swapping out this carburetor. I'm going to steal one from that Rust Bucket 2A right there and give that a shot, because it doesn't hurt and it's only a couple bolts. Okay, the old style carburetor's on there. Now let's give it a try. That's better. All right, potential. Alright, plugs didn't look fouled, but they were completely black with carbon, so I cleaned them a little bit. We'll see what happens. Now, remember, these are the plugs that I found were smashed closed from cleaning the head, and I gapped them without removing them from the head. But I do need a gap, so we'll just re-gap those plugs. There, plugs are gapped. They may not be the best plugs in the world, so I could potentially put new spark plugs in it. But I'm going to look through my bin of old ones and see if I have any better looking ones I can swap them out. Because, yeah, I hoard spark plugs too, used ones. Digging through my bin, I found some that actually look fairly decent. I don't know if these are the right plugs for this motor, but they look like they'll fit, so good enough. And it's so close. So close. Why won't it fire? I've got one other trick up my sleeve for this kind of thing where a motor's almost running but not quite. It's the hot plug method. It takes a little bit of prep work because you got to do it fast. But what I've done, I numbered all my spark plug wires so I get them on in order real fast. Have all my plugs here, 2 spark plug sockets, and a torch. Now you heat up all the plugs till they're real hot. Put them in using the sockets. You got a spare in case one gets hot. Then you try to start it while the plugs are still hot. The heat actually helps the gas burn better. So let's see if this will do it. It's going to take a little while of torching to get these all hot. Alright, I've got to the point where smoke started to come off each plug, and then got them hot enough the smoke stopped coming off. So hopefully that'll do it. Socket's starting to get a little warm, not too bad yet. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now we try to start it. Still not there. I decided I'm going to do a compression test on this motor. And the results, you know how they're supposed to be the same across all the cylinders within a few percent? It's exactly the same on every one. Let me show you. Here's cylinder number 1. Cylinder number 2. Cylinder number 3. Cylinder number 4. This could be a problem. Now my goal for the end of this video was to drive this thing. The motor not having compression is a bit of an issue because not running sort of slows down the driving process. But I realized I have a hybrid here. It's got an electric motor. So let's use that zero compression to our advantage because it's easy to spin over that motor. And let's drive it off the starter motor. It'll move, and then we can try out the clutch and see how that works. Clutch works. Let's try it forward. It's probably actually safer than what I was planning. All right. There we go. And there you have it. I drove it. Not the way I planned. Obviously not done And apparently there's more work to do now because I thought I had a running motor. But I'm not going to be deterred. I'm going to go keep progressing forward in this and just go headlong into it. And maybe when it warms up, the motor will run. We'll find out. But nothing else. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'll keep working on this, and you guys keep having fun too. We'll see you later.